Really? You wrote it on the board.
I didn't write it on the board.
Top left-hand corner.
G-Man wrote it on the board. It was wicked helpful. It looks like it might be helpful again shortly. I'm Colin.
And I'm Malcolm. Welcome back.
And we're at the bitter end for Try Before We Die, because if I'm going out, I'm killing this guy right away so that we die.
Which is a good possibility.
Yes. So, just to be clear, try before we die. We started this off, Mal, with probably somewhere in the 300 bottles of whiskey, Scotch, and, plenty of world market whiskeys. And, what's interesting is, though there are so many bottles we haven't got to, we're starting to see some gaps on some of the shelves around here. And that's in part thanks to the pandemic, because just have not been able to sort of access the Whiskey Ferry and stores.
She's been sort of been clipped and held back a little bit.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting if we fill in some of these gaps. The open bottle shelf really is filling in nicely, though,
yes.
Which is exciting.
We may have to make a show about that.
Yeah. We'll have to some dice rolling, some chip pulling. What bottle would you pick if you couldn't take the signet?
Or we could do, or we could do like a shot before you drop it. I just grab bottles.
We'll have to get Bubbles and get a shopping cart. So here we are at the bar. It's a regular episode. No bottle in front of us, and we don't know what we're going to get after. Anything we should talk about beforehand, Mal?
I think we should definitely continue to establish that this is a ground floor establishment.
This is the ground floor of my house, which is a Europe. What is this? A whiskey bar in the European tradition.
Correct.
Right. It reminds you of a local.
It does, actually, very much so. I like the dark woods.
Yep.
Obviously there aren't taps in front of us.
Yep.
But the fact that I can sit down and relax and have a glass, or
yep.
back at home call it a jar, is really nice. I've appreciated this place as it's grown. I think we've just had a good dinner, and there was a good conversation that went upstairs, and I'm going to touch on it just a little bit.
Okay.
People may look at these videos and go, "Oh, look, there's just these two our friends who obviously enjoying themselves drinking Scotch." And I brought up a question after dinner that sort of goes to why. And I asked the question of Colin of why some of these bottles are unique, or what is the reasoning behind this. And you came up with a great answer.
I think some of what you were asking me, Mal, was sort of, how does value get assigned to the various whiskeys? And you were in particular talking about taste.
Yes.
And I think I countered a little bit with the idea that a lot of times value is associated in whiskey with what the whiskey is, not what it tastes like. Taste is a personal preference.
Correct.
One man's trash is another man's treasure. And so there'll be plenty of whiskeys out there that really cost quite a bit that you might not find super delicious or tasty or palatable, or whatever the word is you're going to use. But the value in that whiskey, in that liquid, is that there might only be X amount bottles in the entire world. Or it might be an example of when we drank the Strathila, which I think was a 53. It might be an example of the way whiskey was made decades ago. And production, means, and all these things come a long way in decades. But to just have an experience that your grandfather or your great-grandfather, the whiskey he might have drank, tasted like. So there are lots of other factors in contributing to the value or the cost associated with a whiskey. And amongst those values, I don't necessarily think taste is always the top of the list. There are lots of very palatable whiskeys, incredibly enjoyable whiskeys that are very moderately priced. And I mean in that $40 to $50 a bottle price range, just because they're just so widely available and just so heavily produced. It's just, you can get it and it's affordable. And so the value comes with the rarity, the uniqueness. Is the distillery even still open and in production anymore? How many of these bottles were released? Because remember, Mal, as the whiskey spends its time aging in the barrel, alcohol, as it's wont to do, evaporates.
Yep.
And that's the angel share. And some of you may have heard that term, and the angel share is, of course, the alcohol that's evaporated. And so there becomes essentially less of that particular vintage just due to the passing of time. Never mind that when it gets bottled, you know, we recently had a bottle of the Jura 77 where there were only 498 bottles. We purchased that bottle, and again, we're not big on the money talk here, but we purchased that bottle for just under 4 figures. Our research here at the bar afterwards, just to sort of, you know, remind ourselves of a few things, showed that we were able to find one bottle for sale in Eastern Europe today for almost 4 times that amount, meaning that of the 498 bottles, there are very few left that are unopened on the market. And it was a fine whiskey, but its value is also connected to what that whiskey is, where it was from, how many were released. And for the most part, these companies aren't releasing disgusting, gross, that's horrible whiskeys, right? So the palatability is going to be there depending upon your flavor preference. The value is going to be connected to the rest of the story.
I think that was the conversation that it now makes this. If you're watching and you pay attention to the way we have approached these shows, that's a little bit of an enlightenment to figure out where your headset is, where you are when you spin the number up and you go and you grab a bottle, the enjoyment that you get. Whereas I am sort of not privy to some of that. Mm-hmm. And obviously we try to explain a little bit about the bottles, especially the more unique ones. But I find it interesting that now, hopefully, the people who watch this can now understand where the two of us come from. You have a lot more invested in this in the sense, hey, look, I went on these trips with such and such people, or this person went to this part of the world and happened to bring this back for me. Whereas I'm like literally just sitting in the bar waiting for a drink to be poured. And that's the way I approach it. And it's interesting that maybe at some stage when we look back on a few of the reviews and maybe go back and try them again or compare them and stuff like that, it will be interesting to see if my approach becomes a little bit different in the sense, okay, here, this was because of such and such bottle that we got from here, and this is what I said about it. But now knowing a little bit more, maybe I revisit this way of thinking about things and say, hey, look, you know what, I have to appreciate this for what it is, not what I'm expecting.
Right. And I'm by no means knocking the experience of the taste of the whiskey. Totally important for, you know, what we're doing. But I am very much interested, and I think this is what you're saying, is that I know the backstory on almost every bottle in this bar and the way in which it came to be in this bar. And depending on the bottle, some of the backstory for how that bottle came to be in existence and for sale. And that adds to my experience.
Correct.
Right. So I'm not just in a bar. I'm having this experience. Lots of folks have these collections of whiskey with no intention of opening them, right?
We're trying before you die.
And we're trying before we die. I think there's something that gets missed. You know, would you own a Ferrari and never drive it? Because if you ever get the chance, I highly recommend it.
All right, so great introduction. I think hopefully that a lot of people will understand a little bit more about why and how this is going down. This is a normal episode, so my esteemed friend over here will spin up a number and he will then proceed to walk around his ground floor established bar and find the bottle so we can crack it open and give you an honest opinion about it.
Unless it's right here.
Unless it's right there.
There we go.
And it's not.
It's not. So, we've learned recently, I don't know, So that was bottle 139. Did we open a bottle after that?
No.
That was the last bottle we opened.
Correct.
Wrong. Right behind you.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So that means we at 139 we've now pulled 2 off the count, so that makes 137.
8. 7.
7.
Yes.
So we're at 137. We have to get to bottle 164, which is going to put us on the backside.
Which is a nice area to be in.
Yeah. So 137, we need to get to 164. Due to the nature of the disarray on this side of the bar, I'll ask the cameraman to meet me on the backside. 164. This is a disaster. I think I'm going to join the cameraman and come around this way. We're at 137. So, we're going to do a count, and then I'm going to do a reach. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 47. 2, 4, 6, 8, 57. What's the number, Mal?
164.
57, 58, 59, 60, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, here we go, before Mal sees. Space side, Mal. It's the Benromach. Oh, classic space side single malt Scotch, 10-year-old.
I'm going to be completely honest. I've never had one of those.
So neither have I. So I have 2 examples of this, the 10-year-old Benromach. To my quick memory, this is the bottling no longer available, and they have changed their labeling. So in this particular labeling, they've identified it on the top with a teardrop age statement and then with a regular label. They have moved to a label the entire way. So if I have this correct, this bottle is no longer available, but this whiskey is still available with new labeling. This is a 10-year-old of 43%. Let's see, is there anything else we can learn from the bottle? Small batches of whiskey are distilled by hand using the finest barley malted with a touch of peat smoke. Excuse me. Benromach. I believe this is a whiskey that is sort of trying to make a statement in the world now. It is sort of coming into its own. They're putting some money into marketing lately. But I don't know a whole lot about this place. Let's see if anybody knows anything about this place. And if you've got anything, Mal, jump right in.
All right, so Benromach. All right. First sentence. Prince Charles is in no doubt among malt lovers keen to taste this 100-year-old distillery born-again whiskey.
So Prince Charles, at one point next to be the king,
Yep.
is a fan of this whiskey. Is that what you've just read?
Yep. And basically, this distillery died as it was under the name of United Distilleries in the mid-1980s.
So it got mothballed, got shut down.
The copper stills were removed. United did subsequently issue one rare malt edition, a 20-year-old. But isolated instances, Benromach has only been available through independent bottlings.
So that would be leftover casks from their original distillation.
But then it was reopened in 1988 by Prince Charles.
Oh, we have a royal whiskey.
Yep. And the early batches have... So this is basically a very, very early... They're early in their growth since 1998. They've gone through their first 3 years, so now they can be officially called single malts, but they've literally just started up.
So, so I think your book, I think Gordon and MacPhail have taken over.
Yep.
And I don't know the year of this book's printing. This will be interesting if it's right there. So I think yours is a 94. And this is a 2005. So Benromach is just one of the new wave of small independent distilleries that are beginning to appear. So it is a comeback. Interesting mix of old and new whiskeys.
So I would say, based on the lettering here, Carl, this is the newer bottle.
It's this piece here
Yep.
that makes me think that it's the old bottle, because the other one of the 10, it has a full label.
See, I would go
Interesting. So I feel even more confident.
Okay.
Because we know sometimes I know of a secret spot to look on the
Yeah.
bottles. So this is from 2014. And I know they came out with a new label recently. And so this is a 7-year, this has been here for a while. And so I feel like this is the old label. Fight me.
So would you say this is the old new label, though, as in the sense that this is from the 98?
This is post mothball.
Okay.
Post mothball. So this is 2014, so 10 years old in 2014, so this is a 2004 distillation.
And in 98, they reopened.
Right, so this was distilled after reopening. So this is not original Benromach pre-mothball.
Yes. So I would, like I said, I would say that's the new labeling then.
Wrong. So, since they started back up in 98,
Yes.
this was the way they began to label their 10-year-old.
Okay.
Recently, they've relabeled with a more of this traditional paper label,
That went all the way back to
That went-
like their older.
that instead of this lettering on the glass.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So this would be the first of their new. And there's another one that's
Correct. This is the way they were labeling it originally when they opened back up. Since then, they've relabeled. I think we just went through this with another whiskey too. I don't know what it is. Oh, Lafrag has changed some of their labeling, and we're going to talk about that in a bonus episode in the near future.
All right.
Okay. Neither one of us have tried this.
No.
I'm excited. It's a Space Side. It's a 10-year-old. What would you say? Color.
Golden.
They say a little bit of peat. Lightly peated malt. We'll find out. So this has been here for 7 years. No failure.
Oh, nice sound.
As advertised.
Ooh.
It's got that peatiness.
Yeah, very much so.
You know, I like the classic bottle that gives the gurgle.
Pete, don't have nightmares over that sound.
I wasn't there for that story, but I know that story. In fact, I was there the next morning, standing in a dirt parking lot. Where the hell are these guys?
That's a journey I would not want to do again.
So the nose is peaty.
Very more so than the discussion I would have thought.
Right, I mean, I think we saw the language of lightly peated malt. So we'll see. Oftentimes the nose has been deceptive when we come to the flavoring.
You take a deep whiff, and you get the sweet.
Touch of peat smoke.
Smells good.
Here we go. So for dinner tonight, Malcolm, I had a lightly breaded Icelandic cod with some lemon butter, and this is, to me, sweet and smoky, and it has an element of a decent after dinner drink, but I'm not sure that it would be multiple after dinner drinks. I feel like it's a nice after dinner drink for me.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you on that.
Okay.
I had the steak. I find this more in. I've had a really crappy day at work, and I want to hit the spot right off the bat.
Okay.
I think this has definitely got a peat taste to it. It's got, I find, a little bit of the medicinal at the very end. Like I'm having a hard time getting rid of it off my palate.
Yeah.
But it definitely is one of those drinks. If I wanted to come home and just have a drink, and know I was having a drink, and that's what I was going to do, and then maybe move on to different things, or maybe have a second one to really put a statement on it, I would say that's what this drink is.
Do you pick up on sweet in the beginning?
Yes, but it's for me, I find the peat taste much more overpowering than I thought it was going to be, until I smelled the cork. Would I put it on par with a true peat giant? No.
It's not an Isla.
But it's definitely got a lot more, for a Speyside, side, it's got a lot more peat than I'd wanted.
You see, all right, and I'm not going to argue that. We talked a little bit about palate and flavor, and that's individual. It to me, there's a ton of Speyside in here with peat.
See, and I disagree with you.
Okay, see, foundationally, I find this to be a Speyside whiskey, and if that peat wasn't there, I feel like this would be incredibly sweet and smooth.
And I will say this, right? And I'm going to look at just in the glasses, right? And maybe that's because you took a smaller sip than me. I took a big sip, and I washed it through my mouth, and then I allowed it to go down. And I do that for every episode. That's what I do. So maybe if I had approached it and said, "Hey, look, I'm just going to sip this and see where this is going to go," perhaps maybe I would agree with you. It definitely has the makings of a Speyside. It has that element of the sweet, almost floral, that like pleasant, like, oh yes, I'm a Speyside and I'm going to be enjoyable. But the fact that it's backed up with this peat taste at the back,
it's smoky,
that I found more overpowering than I was going to give it credit.
So I think you went in thinking that peat was going to be less than it is.
Correct.
So I'd like you to take a sip, hold it in the front of your mouth, a small sip, hold it in the front of your mouth, and perhaps notice not much peat at all until you swallow.
Okay. He's absolutely correct. And I'm going to say this way. You're absolutely correct in what you just made me experience. If I hold it right on the tip of my tongue and in the front part of my mouth, it is all sweet. All sweet. It is immediate as you start to draw it back into your throat that
the smoke releases.
And I will say this. Because I held it longer in the front of my mouth, I got even more of a smoky sensation when it went back. And that probably is the kicker for me, in the sense that that's where I'm like, okay, this has got a little bit too much smoke for me to freaking call it a Speyside. However, if I was just going to keep it in the front of my mouth, I'd be like, hey, this is a Speyside every day of the week.
So let me challenge one more thing. Smoke or peat? because I think it's more peat than smoke. And we connect those things frequently, and frequently they are connected. I find this more peaty than smoky.
I'll roll back the words I'm using. You're right. Smoke is not the right way to describe this. We've had a couple of smoky whiskeys that we've tried that you could tell you just lit a match or you sat around a fire for a while. That's peat. This is more of a peat taste.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you now. That now you've corrected that sense of the description. It's peat, not smoke.
I think so. I mean, so I feel like I'm in this sweet space side to begin, and I'm finishing with this peaty whiskey on the backside. And of course, the peat is smoking the marl.
No, I mean
and all
you
that.
can't not have one without the
But
other.
it's not the campfire that
No.
we've experienced.
No, this is more.
Yeah.
There's a lack of a word. The muddy bog. Which is
The
basically
corpse has lasted
which is
600
basically
years.
which is basically baked off. And that's exactly where you're correct. This is very much peat, not smoke. And maybe that's more the reason why I'm not enjoying it as much as I would be if it was a Speyside, a true Speyside.
Right, or a Speyside minus the peat, right?
Correct.
Right. And so I'm finding this to be a decent after dinner drink. Mal says that it's would be the whiskey he might turn to sort of end a day that was rubbish.
Yes.
Because you would for sure know you were having a drink.
Yes.
Right, and we often want the same thing after dinner. If I wasn't drinking a whiskey after dinner, I might have a Grand Marnier in a warm glass. Right, you're having a drink in that moment, and that's a nice way to wind down a meal. So I think we're both looking for the same thing at the end of an experience.
Correct, and it's a good drink. I'm not going to knock it. It's definitely a good drink.
Yeah, I've got no beef with this at all.
I would definitely be like, oh, okay, these guys know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So.
I didn't see Pete Townsend this time around, but I know he's around here somewhere.
He's been wandering around out in the yard. Because his little brother, Hurry Up, is somewhere around here. So I was reading an article the other day about the Dalai Lama.
I got that going for me.
Gunga the Dubala. And the challenge that's being faced with his reincarnation. And there's a political conversation, and we're not going to get into that, but it made me think about Tibet. And so in Tibet, they have a saying that essentially connects to the idea of cheers. But in Tibet, it turns out that not everything's as clean as you'd want it to be. So you all share the same bottle of beer and you pour small glasses, or the same bottle of liquor and you pour small glasses, smaller than this. And every time you take a drink, you offer a toast. Because apparently in Tibet, we must always toast because we never drink alone.
Oh, that's nice.
And so they recommend, by the way, when drinking in Tibet, that because it's a toast, Westerners will often feel like you have to finish your drink. But since they're toasting after every drink, or every time somebody takes a drink, you toast everybody at the table, you could find yourself in alcohol trouble quickly. So they recommend sipping because you will be toasting all night. And the toast in Tibet is Tashi Deleg.